And we're live.
And we're live.
We're starting at like 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
Today, Pablo, let's talk about Flight 370 of Malaysian Airlines and its disappearance. And I
Yeah.
know you've done some research on it, but tell us how you first heard of this. And I remember we were together at a donut shop.
We were. We were together at a donut shop, and we had befriended this young lady that she was there to help her parents. Her parents were from Malaysia, actually, and they would get up at 4 in the morning to bake all the donuts and do everything that they had to do. And she was going to college and helping her parents out in the donut shop. And we liked her story, and we would go there. We would do what we were called trash runs, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Taking some trash to one of our properties. Anyway, and we became friends, and one morning we went in there. You, your brother, Vicky, me. We were all there, actually, all four of us. And she was taken aback because apparently she knew someone that knew someone that was in the plane. And she commented about what had happened. And, ever since then, it's been in the back of my mind. And then I started looking at it recently. And it's extremely interesting. With the sophistication of technical equipment that we have today, we should have found something. But we haven't found that. We found remnants of a crash, but we haven't found the plane.
And the plane apparently had more than 200 people aboard.
239 persons aboard, including the pilots. And it's devastating because the survivors of the loved ones, they don't have an answer of what actually happened.
Yeah. And I remember when we went to the donut shop, and she's very young. I think she was starting to go into medicine, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, she was getting
Sciences.
She was getting a degree in chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did she comment on something about there was a lot of researchers on that flight?
Right. But that's another flight.
Okay.
As I started looking into some of this stuff, that was actually another flight.
Okay.
Where it's not this one. However, what's interesting about the MH370, it was a 777 Boeing jet, which is, there were some engineers that were talking about the craft itself, and it's a state-of-the-art top airplane, the best they come.
And then also to put some context, this was in the year
I think 2014.
2014.
Yeah, 2014.
2014. So this is March 8th, 2014, it says. That's not a long time ago.
No. Well,
I mean,
it's going to be 10 years.
It's going to be 10 years. That's true. But it's 9 years ago. But you would think that a plane this massive with over 300 passengers we would have some sort of remnants, some sort of...
Yeah, well, okay, look, there's a lot of interesting stuff about it. First, they were studying the pilots because there have been cases where pilots have wanted to commit suicide in midair, okay? So was that one of the cases? And that was ruled out, okay? There was a young co-pilot and a very seasoned Malaysian air pilot that had been flying for thousands of hours. So they knew what they were doing. So the mystery lies in where they don't know if it was hijacked or not, okay? Something that's very interesting is that the airplane loses contact with ground apparently 1 hour and 15 minutes after flight, okay? And then it seems like the transponder was turned off. But this is a plane so technically advanced that there's also in the cargo area another latch that keeps the plane in contact with satellites. In order to turn that off, you physically have to get in there and hit, like they said, you face an electrical room first, so to speak, or an area, and then you have to go through that and hit that other. So, how do they lose this plane? It's practically impossible. So, what ends up happening in my mind, I think, is you get into restricted airspace that is like private to air bases, that belong to the United States. It was close to a very, very major airspace base. I forget the name right now, and I should know it, but what
Of the
happened?
United States.
Yeah, out there near the Indian Ocean. So what happened is that what is very interesting to me and to a lot of people is that the plane ended up, it reverses, it takes a different direction, but then it starts flying near the borders of Vietnam and the other country, so as to not penetrate Vietnamese airspace, because if they do that, then now that's,
A threat,
potentially.
potentially. Yeah.
Because you have to remember, and this is, I mean, you learn so much, and this is post 9/11.
Yeah, 2014.
Right. So what happens is that after 9/11, all the protocols for flying were changed. And if you have a plane that you're not in contact with, whatever airspace that plane is in, apparently fighters get released to go catch up with that plane and fly near that plane and see what's going on. And they have the authority to shoot it down.
Wow.
This is post 9/11, because they can't, they will not allow a plane to crash into, a presidential palace in any country, or a White House, so to speak, or whatever. So, and you learn so much, because I didn't know any of this. And now a major protocol is fighter planes get discharged right away the minute that they lose contact. And eventually they have the authority to shoot it down. There was another case where if the cabin gets decompressed to a certain level, then you lose consciousness. And the fighter planes got close enough to that plane to see that the passengers were, what do you call it, slumped on the chairs. And that other plane eventually ended up crashing, but they followed it.
Wow.
But this one, they truly don't know what happened. And it's really interesting, because all kinds of scientific research has gone into it. And supposedly it fell in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And there's a lot of theories out there that people are looking in the wrong space, and there are no answers. No answers. What's interesting to me also is that you have all these people that are super brilliant coming to the scene, okay,
Right.
to try to figure out what happened so that they can give answers to the loved ones.
But where's the scene, right? Because if it was lost, it's like when I looked it up, it's considered disappeared.
Disappeared.
So where do they go look?
Well, so one of the interesting things to me is that, for example, as they recreate the flights, okay, of MH370, if it was over certain a specific area and one of the engines gave out, then they can simulate a crash And so they look
They
at
can kind
every
of like assume where it
where it fell.
project where it maybe would have fallen.
Right. So what ends up happening is that these people are brilliant. They look at what would have happened, and they also look at what didn't happen. For example, if it fell in this particular area because of the currents in the ocean, okay, certain parts of the plane or many parts of the plane should have washed up towards Australia, but it wasn't. And so what they're asking themselves is, well, wait a minute, if it actually fell here because of the currents of the ocean, we should have had all kinds of stuff washed up in Australia.
Right.
But we don't. So that means it didn't fall there. And that's where the consensus was going. So they look at even the things that have not happened to
Right.
try to create and it's, I mean, I think they've spent somewhere around $165 million in the search, okay? And they haven't found it.
I can't imagine the families.
Oh.
Like you said at the beginning, they have no closure as to like what happened to their loved ones. Jeez,
Yeah,
that's a lot of people.
yeah,
And it's just considered disappeared.
correct.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says.
Now I
when
want to get the number of people right. Was it 239 people?
So
I know it's 39. It ends with 39, but I just want
if
to
we
know.
go off of history.com,
Uh-huh.
it says that Flight 370 of Malaysia Airlines was carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members.
Okay.
339, right?
239 people.
239 people. Yeah.
Just
239 people. And it lost contact with traffic control.
and there are a lot of why would the transponder be turned off? Why? You know? Now, a lot of theories come into place because of what happened with 9/11, now they're saying that through technology, we should be able to control an airplane that's in mid-flight, okay? And not necessarily by the cockpit. So, it's just like a remote control thing, right? So there's just a lot of theories out there.
Other I mean, I don't know how it works with pilots, but I've spoken to many truck drivers. They fall asleep at the wheel. It's normal for them.
Wow.
And actually, I was having a conversation with a family member that is a truck driver for over 30 years. And now the vehicles have like sensors, kind of like cars, where they warn you if you're going over the lines and whatnot. And sometimes they wake up to the beep, 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 that you're going over the line, and because it's you're pulling sometimes a double trailer, you have to slowly readjust. But he was sharing with me a story that not that long ago off of the 5 freeway, there was a trucker that fell asleep at the wheel and went over the freeway.
Over the center divider?
No, not over the divider. It was like a ramp.
Oh.
And he was up on a ramp and fell asleep at it. And the front part, which is the cabin, along with 2 trailers flipped over. And he ended up surviving by a miracle, but he did end up with internal injuries and handicapped. But it's so common. Anyway, so going to the pilots, what are their measures to prevent accidents from happening by falling asleep? I'm not too familiar with how it works there, but should there be something else? Like, Elon Musk talks about self-driving, right? He's created self-driving. Would that be safer? because these guys are running on a couple hours of sleep, or who knows how many hours
Yeah,
of sleep.
I wouldn't want a self-driving plane.
Yeah, you got to look at the pilot before you get on the plane.
Well, one was a very young pilot. I think the co-pilot, I think, was 28 years old. Okay? Rising star, sharp kid. And the other guy was like, I think in his 50s, 52. Extremely experienced, many, many hours in the air. And he had, to his credit, well, he had a simulator at his house, a plane flight simulator, and he would make YouTube videos and say, today we're going to go over this and that. And so he was a seasoned pilot. So, I don't think pilot error or, like I said before, suicide or something, it was the thing. But what's interesting is, why go on the borders of these countries to avoid their airspace? Okay? And what happened after 1 hour and 15 minutes? Because you can hear the pilot. Apparently, when you're in different airspace, you say goodbye, whatever space, good night, and good morning, Vietnam, or something like this. And that was the last thing that they heard the pilot say. But it kept flying. According to maybe some satellite information. So then there's something that happens to the plane when the plane loses all the fuel. Okay, when you run out of fuel and you're up there, something happens to the plane, and then they simulated part of what that was, and they showed one engine turning off or going off, and then the plane starts veering to the left, and then the second engine goes, and then there's a spiral and coming down. So there's this engineer, I think he's British, and he's aeronautical scientist or something like this, and he has been able to show the spiraling in some kind of computer tracking.
Okay.
Tracking, not a simulation, but a tracking actually. And he's been able to, because apparently there's an interference in radio waves, okay? And I'm not too keen on this. I should be better because we're doing a video, but it's extremely interesting. And
these are things that we look up and are interesting to us. We're not experts in it.
No, we're not experts by any means. And so apparently during that evening, in that section of the air, there were only 2 planes up, which to me is incredible, because the other day, looking at something like this, I looked up at the activity over the United States of airplanes. Oof. Oh my Lord.
There are so freeway. It's like a freeway up there.
It's a freeway up there. There are so many airplanes flying at one particular time.
At different altitudes, at different
it's incredible.
Times. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The number of planes that are up there at one point. So this guy was able to discern that there were only 2 planes, and he was able to distinguish one from the other because they were like an hour and 15 minutes apart. Okay? So what happened to the plane? You've got scattered parts of a plane that have,
some
beached.
Appeared in Africa and the Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean and so forth. But what happened to the fuselage? What happened to the engines? Where is it?
Right.
And why did it take so long? And why that trajectory? What happened? Was it really hijacked? And so the more you look into it, the more questions that you have. Yeah. And the loved ones don't have any closure, and it's got to be absolutely devastating to lose someone that you love like that.
And like you said, with the technology that we have for a plane to be disappeared at that amount of passengers, what did we say? 239,
239
and
passengers.
such a massive plane. I in talking about this, I also looked up a little bit, not just kind of briefly, Amelia Earhart, and her plane, and she was never found. She's considered also disappeared. Now this was in the this says that occurred she was declared dead in 1939, but it was in 1937 that Earhart set out to fly around the world with Fred Noonan, her navigator, in a twin-engine Lockheed Electra. And then on June 1st, the duo began their 29,000-mile journey, departing from Miami, heading east. And they also disappeared.
Well, on that, I did read something where through the radio, because technology has come a long way, so they had a radio on the plane, so it was primitive, let's say, because you're talking, what, 1937?
We're talking July 1937, yeah?
Yeah. So somebody picked up on their radio, okay, this homeowner, a woman saying, "Help me. I need help. Help me. Somebody help me." And then that it died off. And then they did find, I think they found her remains. No. Well, Wikipedia says no, but it's not the best.
History.com.
Okay.
If we
I'm gonna look into it.
A good source, that she Earhart disappeared somewhere over the Pacific in July of 37. Her plane wreckage was never found. She was officially declared lost at sea.
I think it was found, but much. Okay. So I don't know if that's updated or maybe I'm wrong, but
yeah.
Anyway, so getting back to this, it's got to be devastating for the families. It's got to be, and there are more questions than answers.
Yeah, I had heard. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't see anything saying that she was found, but
I'll look it up. I read something about it, or somebody heard through their.
There's some theories out there that like she landed on some islands and maybe it was a cannibal tribe or whatever. Oh. Like I've heard lots of different, but I don't know that anything of that was proven.
Yeah.
But the Malaysian flight.
And recently, I think the government came out and said, "Look, we're gonna stop all search. We can't keep looking for this airplane forever."
Wow.
And that was a devastating blow for the families.
Sure.
And then there was also and they gotta 10 years have gone by, and if it fell, it's in the ocean, and they gotta do whatever they can to find it. There's a private expedition that went out and tried everything, and they couldn't find anything. But the more time goes on, the less likely that we're going to find something. Because in the ocean is a vast, massive watering.
Oh.
And so, I mean, many parts of the ocean have not been researched.
Yeah.
And there's so much to discover in our oceans. Like, and I don't mean to change, but for example, they need to find an airplane quick, because there was a recent study done on the was a big ship that went on Titanic. There was a recent study done on the Titanic where these folks that were studying it were saying, well, look, the second deck was like 15 feet higher than the first deck, and now when we go back, it's only like 7 feet. What happened? Why is it caving in on itself? Because steel is supposed to last a lot longer than what is lasting. Why is this happening to the Titanic? What they realized was that there are colonies of bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, that are actually feeding off the ship, the steel. They're taking the minerals. They don't need air, but they need the minerals like steel, whatever it is in there, and they're actually eating it from the inside out. Colonies of billions of bacteria on the outside and on the inside. And so when they did microscopic examination of some of the parts that they brought up recently, they were brittle with holes. And that's because the bacteria is in there eating it up. And so it's increasing the time that this thing is going to disappear. This bacteria is increasing it by tenfold or whatever.
Wow.
It's incredible. So, you see these organisms that, they're feeding off the hull of the ship. So they need to find this airplane quickly, because there's all kinds of things out there that, the salt water, the this, the whatever. If it keeps too much longer,
it's going to be harder and harder.
To find what happened.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe that with all the satellites that we've got.
Yeah. All the cameras and
everything that we've got going, that we can't pinpoint the last, and this happened under the Obama administration. And I've got nothing against Obama, but one of the theories is that he was way too quiet about the entire thing. And he actually visited Malaysia during the time that this was happening, the investigation and so forth. And they didn't mention apparently anything about it. And there's an air base, and a very powerful and big American air base out there that has satellites and protections and this and that. And one of the ideas was, if the plane got too close to that air base, and this being post 9/11, could the civilian plane have been shot down by a government fighter jet? And I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying we don't know, and these are the things that are coming up.
Yeah, and until it's found, we won't have all these answers.
We don't have the answers, but
yeah,
the loved ones deserve to know something.
The closure. Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody knows.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to talk.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting situation, and hopefully down the road it does. But no, thanks for sharing, your research on that.
And there's a lot of loved ones that are not giving up.
Oh, for sure.
They're not giving up.
Yeah.
There's a few families that are sticking together,
Mm-hmm.
and they're continuing forward, and they've made it their life purpose to find out what happened to their loved ones, and I just feel really bad for them. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up there.
We'll wrap it up there.
All right.